Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to show you how to install Odoo 15 Community onto Ubuntu 22.04 LTS that is hosted on DigitalOcean because they have one of the cheapest VPS around, which is only $4 USD, right? So it's 512 megabytes memory. So I'm going to show you how to configure the system such that it can run Odoo 15. And of course, it can only support 2 to 3 users. So if you need anything more than that, do be prepared to pay for a bigger VPS size. But then the next larger one is like 1 gig RAM, which only costs 6 USD. So it's still very reasonable. So we're gonna go into the console terminal. You can just launch this from your DigitalOcean panel. So this is where it will be. So I'm going to run some scripts that I'll provide a link to this text file. So you can easily just copy and paste all the stuff you need into the console. So first up, whenever a new installation of the OS is done, you want to update it and install the latest upgrades, right? So because the out-of-the-box version that is in DigitalOcean could have been a bit old, and some of the security stuff especially might be outdated and obsolete. So it's always good practice, once you have installed the OS, execute this to get all the latest stuff. So just let it run, might take a while. Right, so just okay to this. Right, so once it is done, it's also good practice to do a reboot to make sure that everything is working fine. Right, so we execute a sudo reboot. So then it will close and you reopen the console after a while. Right, we're in. So now, the first things that we want to do is to set up the swap space, because this is only 512 megabytes of RAM. So if you do not set up a swap, the Odoo process will crash easily, especially when you're installing the apps. So we're gonna go ahead to set up the swap space. Free command will check what you have, amount of memory and what is set up in your swap. So you can see currently the swap has 0 bytes. It's not been set up yet. And df -h will show you how much disk space that you have. So you are currently using only 18%. So that's more than enough. So I'm going to proceed to create the swap. Right, creating a swap of 512 megabytes. Changing the permissions to only root. Make the swap recognizable. Turn it on. Make sure that it's mounted in the F step. So going to make a backup of the fstep file before we add this new line into it, right? So there's this couple of commands that you want to configure as well. I shan't go into too much details, so just be aware that we are changing these two figures, 60 to 10 and 100 to 50, right? So it will make sure the swap is not used too much and too frequently. So it needs to be edited in the configuration file. I will just do this. Add these 2 lines to the back of the file itself. Right, exit. Right, now reboot. Okay, since we already root. Again, give it a while. Alright, it's back. So we want to check again whether the swap file has been configured. So we're going to run this free command again. And as you can see, it is now 511 megabytes. So we're going to go into installing Odoo itself. First up is the dependencies that Odoo needs to run. Right, so just run this. Right, so there was something wrong with the libSSL version. I'm going to check it out and come back. Right, so I'm going to go into creating a system user for Odoo 15. So it's good practice to label the user with a version of the software you're installing. In PostgreSQL installation, so now we're going to create the user for PostgreSQL. That's done. Download the wkhtmltopdf file, the installer. Change it so that it's executable and install it. This allows Odoo to convert the HTML into PDF. That's what they do for invoices, printing of invoices and reports. Right. Link the file. And just to check that the version is correct. Yes. Next, we're going to go into installing the Odoo itself. So we're going to switch user into Odoo 15. And we're going to clone the version 15 branch from GitHub. Okay. You notice that the depth is 1, so that it doesn't bring down all the historical versions. It will make the archive much smaller. Right. That is done. Change directory into it. And we're going to set up the Python environment. Okay, we want to have a standalone Python environment so that whatever libraries that are installed there is only for this Odoo 15. So that means we allow ourselves to install another container for another Odoo version, for example. Right, this is installed. Next thing we want to do for Odoo requirements, dependencies, because there is a libsass library that needs the latest versions in order for it to work. Right? If not, there will be an error in the installation itself. So you need to come into here and change this to version 20.1. Right? Before you proceed to trigger the installation. this will take a while. Right, finally we are done. So now that this is installed, we can deactivate the Python environment. And I'm going to proceed to create a custom directory for custom add-ons. And I'm going to exit the Odoo 15 user environment back to root. So now we're going to edit the configuration file. Copy and paste from options down to log file. Right, paste this. Change the admin password to something that you want. Later on, we're going to change this again when Odoo is being accessed from the browser. So we can just put this as admin and be done with it. Change the owner of the file to Odoo 15 so that later on it will actually change the file content when the master password has been reset. Then you will see all the variables that are available in Odoo itself. Make the directory for the log file. Change the owner for the directory. And next we're going to create the service for Odoo 15 so that system will know how to start it and what it needs. Copy this and paste it in and exit. So we're going to reload the daemon so that it knows that there is this new service, and we're going to make sure that it starts, especially when you reboot. So now you can already check the status. You can see it's active, right? So this command will show you what is some of the logs. Okay, started. So the log file should have already been created as well. So there is a way to run it so that you can see what is going on. So I will always use this tail command so they can actively display the content of the log file when I am accessing it from a browser, right? So you can quickly see what is going on in the background and whether there is any error that could have killed the system, right? So currently it's waiting on this. So it's up and running. So next, you just need to go to your browser and access your Odoo installation. So go to your browser, paste the IP address and enter 8069. So you can see on the left is running the logs, right? Because you've accessed it. So by default, Odoo will prompt you to change. Okay, so you can change it below, enter something that you prefer. And our first database, we're just going to test it out. This is where I am. Load the demo data. And let's create it. So as you can see, it is successfully created. And let's go ahead and install an app to make sure that it works. If the swap file was not configured, this is the point where it might break, right? So it will suddenly load halfway and stop working. So and you wouldn't know whether it is properly installed. So that is the problem you will encounter. So once the swap file is set up, you will not encounter this problem. Right, it's up and running. Let's try to print something. Right, and it works. So you're done. So we're going to log out from this account. And we're going to manage databases, set a master password. Okay. And once this is done, you can go back to your Odoo. Look at your configuration file. All right. So as you can see, this file has been updated when you change your master password. So you will see that the admin password is something encrypted, right? And you'll see all the other options out here that you can change. You won't need to change anything for now until when you set up the reverse proxy for your web server like Nginx or Apache. Then you'll be back here to make the changes. Right? For now, this setup is good enough for using and for 2 to 3 users, as I said earlier. So that's it for this video. Any questions, drop it in the comments and I'll try to reply. See you around.